Alrighty guys, welcome back to the AussieDevFro YouTube channel and welcome to a different video. This is going to be a sort of like an early snapshot review of a new MMORPG. It's in VR of all things, Zenith VR MMO. Actually a really cool game that was highlighted to me by my community, or by the community, and I thought, hey, I love MMORPGs, I love VR, and it just so happens to be releasing for pretty much every single VR device out there, well, most of them anyway, and it's cross-platform. So I thought, hey, why not give it a go and see if they've made Sword Art Online real yet, or whether I need to keep sleeping for another decade or so before I can live out my crazy flipping around like Yoda in VR dreams. Obviously, we're not at that point just yet, but that being said, if you want the too long didn't read, Zenith VR MMO is actually pretty good. Aside from a few sort of caveats that come with MMORPGs and VR, it's a fantastic game, and I really do recommend it. Even in its current form, it's not for everyone, but it is pretty good. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So essentially, I've played about, I'm going to say about 6 hours of the game. I wouldn't say I've played everything in the game. I've definitely only played a very small portion of the game. But as I said, this is just my early sort of impressions, a snapshot of how I feel about the game after my initial gameplay experiences. And I've had a really good gameplay experience, and I've had a very average gameplay experience. So I've kind of had the best of both worlds, so to speak, or the best and worst. Anyway, let's get into the sort of review in proper. So let's start with how does it feel as a VR game? I think this is important because when you're looking at a VR game versus a regular game, you've kind of got to class it a little bit different, because technology in VR is still very, very limited, especially on the PlayStation VR, which is what I'm running this on. Now, you can see footage of the game. You can see footage of me playing the game while seated, which I think is great. Something a lot of other VRs like the Vive and the Oculus, aside from a few of the hands-free or the cord-free Oculus, that is, they require you to have a decent amount of space around your computer and a decent computer to help set it up. Now, I know we're getting further away from that, as I said, with the Oculus Quest and the Quest 2 and stuff like that, but we are still, in a way, tethered to space. PlayStation VR, especially in its seated mode, which you can see me playing here, allows me to play the game in the comfort of my couch. Yes, you've got to have a bit of distance between you and the TV, but it's by far less distance than you would need if you were standing up and playing this game. So, as a VR game, I first of all have to give the team props for allowing you to play while seated. Especially allowing such freedom of movement while seated as well. I don't get motion sick easily in VR. If you are playing seated, I believe I could see people getting motion sick. I really, really could. Movement is done just by essentially holding down a button and looking where you want to go, or using the snap turn to turn. I'm not a big fan of the snap turn myself. That being said, I do like how I can slightly change my angle of movement with my head turning. That is appreciated. But as a VR game, they've really got movement down quite well. They've really understood the play space that certain players have. And I think I never felt limited using the PlayStation VR. Some games like Vacation Simulator, Job Simulator, Five Nights at Freddy's VR, all these games, I felt limitations on the PlayStation VR. I still could experience the full game, but there were tracking issues, or sometimes I had to move in a direction that the PlayStation VR really wouldn't allow me. Zenith doesn't do that. Zenith, I think there's not been a single section of the game where I've gone, oop, I can't do that because my PlayStation camera can't see me, or my room isn't big enough. So kudos, first of all, in terms of making it a very easily accessible VR game. It doesn't matter what system you play it on. Now, I obviously can't talk for higher end systems. However, I've been told it's also quite smooth on those other systems too. But my reasoning is, if I could run it and play it very easily on the PlayStation VR, then it's got to be doing well on the other systems as well. So as a VR game, You're not hobbled by what system you have. I believe it's the Oculus, the Vive, and the PlayStation VR. I believe. I don't think it's on the Quest or the Quest 2, but yes, it is very easily playable on PlayStation VR. In terms of as an MMO, and I'm purely talking about the technical aspects, I'm not actually getting into the gameplay or the graphics or anything like that just yet. I'm talking about as a VR game and as an MMO. As an MMO, it's fairly basic, which a lot of VR games are, but as an MMO, it's essentially you follow your quest line, you have a couple of classes, and you just quest and you gather and you craft. Yes, you can interact with other players. Interaction is incredibly easy because microphones are on by default because we're in VR headsets. I had to find that option very quickly to turn off my microphone because that makes me a little uneasy. But as an MMO, I can definitely see it evolving, absolutely. But at the moment, it is pretty much your bare basics for an MMORPG. Players everywhere, running around, killing and farming mobs together, finding resources, and performing quests. There is a group quest. I haven't actually done the group quest just yet because, you know me, a little bit anxious when it comes to social interaction in MMOs. But there are group quests there, and the good thing, I suppose, considering this is a VR MMO, is that you're able to do the group quest solo if you're strong enough, which I think is important because not everyone has friends who use VR. I think that's important. I think it's always important for MMOs to allow solo players who are strong enough to do group quests, because not everyone does like meeting up with randoms. Now, but yeah, as an MMO, I've seen the tutorial zone and I've seen the starter zone essentially after that, and yeah, it introduced me to the mechanics quite well. It's as I said, it's a very bare basic MMORPG. But at this point in VR development, I don't think you could expect too much more. But the core is there, and I definitely believe it could evolve going forward. They could definitely add more into it. And I'll get into that when I talk about Zenith's mechanics specifically. On that note, let's have a look at what makes Zenith, I think, so special. I believe it's the combination of the VR and the mechanics, the movement mechanics specifically, that they've included. Combat is stuff we've seen in the past. I've played the ranged class, the caster. You have a couple of laser pistols, you have some spells, and essentially point and shoot. You've got some little gimmicky flourishes with your hands to trigger spells, but it's mostly just point and shoot. We've seen that in VR games in the past. The other class is a swordsmaster, and you run around chopping things up with blades. Now, all the classes have abilities that can line themselves up to either tank, support, or DPS, and you can swap between them, which is really, really cool, really fluid, allows players to play in everything. Doesn't matter what role is needed, you can change that role, Final Fantasy XIV style. That's really important, especially for a game that is limited by its player base. Allowing players to essentially have free reign over what their role is and what they can do in the game is very important. It allows players to play together a lot easier. So the combat itself, again, for an MMO, is quite basic. For a VR game, is quite basic. However, when you combine that with the movement that is within the game, it becomes something a little bit special. So movement in Zenith, as I said before, it's just hold down a button, you move forward. You have snap to turn or move your head to turn. But the really cool thing is the climbing and gliding. Now, if anyone's who's played Zelda Breath of the Wild, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it's exactly that. They have ripped it straight out of Zelda and brought it into Zenith. And there is nothing wrong with that, because if you thought it was fun to climb up a giant mountain in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and then glide off it, you haven't felt that in VR yet. Because it is so much more impressive in VR. Because you're the one doing it. Now, in Zenith, you can literally walk up to any surface. It doesn't matter what the surface is. Reach out with your hands, hold down the trigger, grab on, and climb up. As long as you have stamina, you can keep climbing. And then same thing. You hold your hands out, you T-pose, and you just jump off a cliff, and you start gliding. Very, very cool stuff. Wonderfully, it's a wonderfully powerful feeling of freedom with all these movement tech, and it's something that not many VR games allow for, especially in the more sort of adventure sort of style of VR games. A lot of VR games want to keep you in one spot so that they can track you better. This game's gone, heck no, we're going to give you as much freedom as we can while you're still in that one spot. And I think that's really, really cool. Again, other aspects of the game are fairly basic. In VR, they're kind of different. They're kind of special because you're physically doing them all. But this movement, not only is the movement taken, inspiration or copied from another really well-made game and a game that has done movement really well, but applying them to VR has really set that apart. I spent the bulk of my first 5 hours moving. I wasn't really fighting. I wasn't really questing. I was just climbing things and gliding and exploring and finding secrets, finding loot chests. Like, that was what I was doing. And it was really good fun. Before I knew it, I'd lost 5 hours. So that's what I mean. Like, in terms of a game that wants you to lose itself in its world, it has an incredibly powerful base. Incredibly powerful base. And then when you add on some nice basic combat, that there's nothing wrong with it. It's not amazing, but there's nothing wrong with it. You add in some decent questing, add a bit of multiplayer. They've really got a really well-designed core package of an MMORPG. It just needs, honestly, in terms of VR games, it just needs a bit more. It just needs a bit more in there, more quests. It just needs a bit more variety. It just needs a bit more in terms of the combat, because I'm doing the exact same strategy every time when I go into combat. Lightning bolt, earthquake to get them away from me, run backwards, fire my guns. Like that, it's the exact same combo every time, but it works. So yeah, really, really fun to play around the world. Now, I think the last thing that needs to be addressed, which I think is the least important thing for any VR game at this point in time, is how it looks. Obviously, I've mentioned it before, I'm playing it on the PlayStation VR. Graphics are going to be kind of meh. The resolution on the PlayStation VR is terrible in comparison with many other VR headsets out there. That being said, the game looks well enough. It looks good enough while you're in the headset. The footage you mostly are seeing is I believe it's 720p, possibly. I'm pretty sure it is. Feel free to shout me out in the comments, yell at me for being wrong. I appreciate that. But when you're in the headset, the only thing I can complain about is that the text can be a little bit hard to read at a distance. You've got to get really close to the HUD elements to be able to read them. But that's just I'm assuming just a PlayStation VR problem. I'm assuming that's not a problem for any of the other headsets, just because of the resolution problems. That being said, I still do highly recommend this game on the PlayStation VR, because I think it's a game you could very easily lose yourself in and just play for a very long time. But yeah, I mean, there is crafting, there is cooking. The cooking's a fun little mini game. It took me a little bit to work out, but once I did, that was kind of enjoyable. And yeah, I think there's not too much else I can really talk about, if I'm honest. As an MMO, it's got a good core. It's basic, but there's nothing wrong with that. As a VR game, it's doing some wonderful, wonderful things with movement. Absolutely incredible. I think it's one of the best VR games in terms of freedom of movement I have ever played. It's second only to Iron Man VR in terms of freedom of movement and the showing me what VR can do to make you feel like you're in a world. So I would say it's the second best VR game to do that for me. And then when you combine it all together, I think it's a really, really engaging and fun experience that I think has a lot of room to grow. I really hope this game picks up a bit of sort of exposure, and I hope it trends a bit more in the VR space. I hope it gets more people looking into VR, because I think this game has a wonderful opportunity to push what's there, and push and push more people into the VR space. Is it Sword Art Online? No, it is not. Does it give you the possible chance that we could have a Sword Art Online in 10 years, 20 years? Yeah, it kind of does. But yes, definitely a game I will see myself playing quite solidly over the next month. Will I continue playing it past that month? Because there's a PlayStation Plus subscription involved, I don't know. I will need to look at it when I get to that point. But as far as if the game was just a game I could play, then yes, absolutely, I reckon I could pick this up every now and then and give it a good go. So yes, I think this is well worth your time. If you have a VR headset and it comes out on multiple VR headsets, I believe it comes out. Essentially, just double check. I could be wrong. I don't have the info in front of me. I really should. This is not professional of me. But it's on PlayStation VR. I'm assuming it's on the Oculus, and I'm assuming it's on the Vive. I could be wrong. But essentially, PC and PlayStation, I would say, is where you can grab this game. Definitely recommend it. Have a look into it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed my rambling and my impressions of the video of the game of Zenith VR MMO. And yeah, I'll see you when I see you. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching the video today. Hope you had a good time. I know I sure did. Please do consider commenting below parts of the video that you liked or didn't like. Helps me out when making future content. Also, please remember I am live on Twitch 5 nights a week, and you can find the link in the description below. Alrighty, have a good one, guys.